Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Today on the show, we are going to look at the state of the auto sector. We've been talking about companies and manufacturing units sort of waiting and watching before actually starting production. Some of them have been allowed to in green zones from the 20th of April. And among them are the top auto companies as well, whether it's Mahindra & Mahindra, whether it's Tata's, whether it's Maruti, whether it's Bajaj. They all now have some permissions or the other to start operations in various states where their plants are. But they are hesitant to begin, waiting and watching to see if the conditions really are right for work to start. Can this be sustained? Can production begin again, especially with the stringent conditions that have come forth? Have the clarifications from the government side helped? This is what we will be looking at as the first big debate on the show this evening. But before we start the discussion, let's play out this report for you, which talks about what's happening on the ground.
On April 20th, Modi government allowed industries in the green zone to start operations with certain conditions. The idea was to start production and get the economy started again, even though at a slow pace. Motown, which contributes a large chunk to manufacturing, however, has chose to not participate. Many companies, despite permissions, are not going ahead with production plans. Maruti Suzuki has acquired permission to begin production in Manesar. Mahindra has permissions to start operations at the tractor plant in Rudrapur. Bajaj can start operations at its Waluj and Pantnagar plant both. Tata Motors is awaiting permissions to operate at the Jamshedpur plant.
When we spoke to the car companies, they came up with a host of reasons or host of challenges what they are facing at this point of time. And the first one is that even though the manufacturing plant of these companies might be able to operate or have the permission to operate and are falling in the green zone, many suppliers are still in the red zone. That's why supply of the part is an issue. Second and more importantly is adhering to this social distancing norms also is a challenge. There are many places where there are fixed machines, and to really keep that spacing for the manufacturing plants is coming as a challenge. Thirdly, the amount of penalties on violation of these lockdown norms is also something which they are worried of. Now, even though the government has provided clarification, Motown is asking for more clarification and more surety from the government. And lastly, and most importantly, most of the dealerships at this point of time are stocked up with the BS6 vehicles and are closed. And that is precisely the reason a lot of companies are asking that there is no reason for us to manufacture if we can't sell.
Companies with export commitments and exposure are still looking to restart operations if given more clarity on lockdown norms. Bajaj Motorcycle, Mahindra Swaraj Tractors and Tata Trucks have exposure to markets outside, but they need more clarity and surety from the government to open the locks. In Mumbai, with Utkarsh Chaturvedi, this is Abhimanyu Sharma in Delhi for ET Now.
Let's go across and get a perspective of what really is going on in the industry. I had a chance of chatting with a top boss at a major auto company today to get his perspective. And the message was clear. Despite government clarifications again and again, saying that there will be no great penalties on the top management if there's even a single COVID-19 case, companies are uncertain about really starting operations. So for how long can companies stay in this standstill mode, and what would be the impact of that? To discuss this, I'm joined today by Arun Malhotra, former MD of Nissan India, Hormazd, Sorabjee, editor of Autocar India, and Vinkesh, Gulati, vice president of FADA, which is of course one of the biggest dealers associations in the country. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with me today. Mr. Malhotra, let me begin with your take. And this is sort of an example of what is happening in one sector and other sectors, but specifically on auto. Do you see companies actually starting production, and to what end?
Tamanna, it's a very challenging situation at the moment. First of all, you have linked the zones in the country in the red zone, the amber zone, or the red zone, or the green zone. But most of the auto component manufacturing is in the specified red zones. And even where it is not in the red zone, let's take an example of Pantnagar or Hardwar in Uttaranchal Pradesh. There even the preconditions, the ifs and buts are so many, it's not an easy task. But what manufacturers definitely can do, because since you have locked your factories for some time, you need to ramp it back. You need to get the process in, you need to get the operational to systemize. So that sort of job will start. But regular production to start, and then meeting all the conditions, getting the labor, a lot of casual labor is involved, some of them have gone back. So it's quite a challenging task. So one side you have the regulatory challenges, other side you have the operational challenges, which is more related to your manpower, and third is getting also the entire supply chain, which is not only tier 1, there's tier 2, tier 3. And if when you make an automobile vehicle, any component missing is you can't produce. So it's a complex issue. It's not an easy task. But these are early days. I would call it more like a practice match at the present moment.
Hormazd, is there a silver lining you see really for the auto industry at this point? I mean, we set the context about how bad things were even before COVID-19. But with this, what are auto manufacturers really telling you? What are OEMs telling you?
Well, I think, frankly, I don't see a silver lining right now, just the way things are going. Sometimes even the way the lockdown is being handled. Of course, they say that manufacturing can start, but on-ground reality is different. And as Arun said, the whole supply chain is disrupted. But, even if the supply chain wasn't disrupted, I mean, the whole point is the demand is really hit badly. There's no point producing cars if there's no one to sell it to. And, I clearly think that there's no clear picture when people can, start buying cars, go into showrooms. Even if that doesn't happen, I think there will be a change in the way people start buying cars initially. Firstly, they need to want cars. I mean, consumer sentiment is really down right now. So I think it's really a big challenge. One just hopes that, the silver lining is what you see in China, where there's been a big bounce back of demand for personal mobility purely because of the fright of taking, public transport. But clearly, it'll have to be some affordable solutions, because someone taking public transport would want a similar, affordable private vehicle. So I personally think it's a very, very tough situation right now, both on the supply and the demand side, which is quite unique because we've never had that before. Firstly, you can't make cars, and then it's difficult to find people to buy them as well.
On the demand side, Vinkesh, let me come to you about how dismal the situation is right now, and what is the circumstance that dealerships find themselves in. There has been some kind of help from automakers to dealerships, or at least they've said that they have. Do you see a complete upheaval in this side of the business?
No, I agree with Hormazd. I am not seeing any silver lining or upheaval. See, very frankly, car purchase or a two-wheeler purchase it's a very discretionary type of purchase. So I doubt that anybody after the lockdown comes up and buys a vehicle. So leave apart 10-15% of the customers who are already in touch with the dealers, who are planning to buy the vehicles for the Kudi Parva coming in or the Navratra, which went away during the lockdown. So maybe those customers who were in touch, whose payments we were having, and the finance formalities were complete, they may still come back because they have made up their mind. But expecting fresh customers to come in and buying the vehicle, I doubt. So there has been a story going on, like you said, that because of the social distancing and the fear of traveling in public transport, we'll see a lot of demand coming in. I feel it will still take time for that to normalize and then come in. Maybe a quarter or maybe a month or 2 months later, the economy opens up. Actually, we'll see auto coming back slowly.
No, so what is the staying power then? In all of that period, do dealerships and everyone in the supply chain have that staying power? You're anyway in the midst of a transition to BS6 and new technology, etc. How many of these players will survive?
So I can tell you about the dealers. We are in a mess as of now, because we are normally a trading community where we sell every month, earn every month, and spend every month. and our 70 to 80% of the expense is actually fixed. So if you're talking of interest, talking of rent, talking of the salary of the manpower, even with the lockdown, we have to cover all those three parts. But whereas our workshops are not on, so automatically the inflow of vehicles are not there, earning is not there, the sales are not on. So we don't have any fixed income coming in. If the shop is closed, we can still have it. So as an association, we have gone to the Prime Minister also, asking for support in the interest part from the RBI through him, and the salary part through ESIC. And additionally, we have gone to SIAM also to at least think of our capability of how to manage these times. Because a month is okay. A dealer would have maybe a small cash reserve which he can liquidate and give it as salaries and rents. But if it extends, like it has already been more than 40, 45 days, and what rumor is coming, and it will again, we see again 14 days more or 30 days more, depending upon which area we are, which zone we are in. So a dealer being sustaining without any earning for 2-3 months and paying the rent and salary is very, very difficult. So let's hope things improve better, or maybe we get support from the manufacturer side, which we are still seeking, to at least be there when the market opens up and be resilient enough to reply and be aggressive again when we see the demand coming in.
So we have a situation where dealers are finding it difficult to subsist. Auto companies are wondering whether to actually start production or not, and demand is pretty much drying up. Hormazd, let me get a deeper perspective from you on the demand side, and the kind of products, etc., which were lined up before all of this hit. Do you see a shake-up over there and more innovation coming in to really cater to newer kind of demand and newer segments of people?
Well, one thing that there is there are a couple of vehicles, let's say, waiting to be unlocked, in the sense that they are ready for launch. They've been delayed because of the lockdown. So you'll see some brands launching their vehicles, which will give a bit of a spurt. But, again, any new vehicle always has some interest. Obviously, relative to what the situation is right now, it will be far, far less. But it's better than not having any new vehicles at all. I think that's one kind of, let's say, a boost that one can expect. But, coming to Vinkesh's point, I think it's a very, very grave situation for the industry as a whole, because fundamentally, this is a very manpower-intensive industry, even at the dealer level, the manufacturer level. And, to carry that fixed manpower cost every month, I mean, dealers, they have oxygen for maximum about 2 months. You will literally see dealerships folding up if this lockdown persists. And then, frankly, with a depleted dealer network, obviously, there are no outlets to sell the cars. So that also might reduce. So I think really the way I look at it is, certain structural issues need to be fixed going forward. Government has to step in. Frankly, I would be very, very surprised if they did. This is not an industry the government has ever helped. Also, the Supreme Court decision, which has been so unfair and unjust, quite honestly, because it just didn't make sense. Instead of just a simple extension of the lockdown, it was very conditional, 10% of sale, all that sort of thing, which we've gone into. So I think, the auto industry really has been had a tough time that way. And don't forget, you even had a whole BS6 transition coming in right now. So clearly, it's been just double, triple, quadruple whammies all over. And I think it's going to be very difficult for the auto industry to sustain it on its own, in the lieu of no help coming, which I don't think will. I think the way forward is going to be for manufacturers literally to get together and collaborate. There might even be a scope for multi-brand dealerships. I don't know. Vinkesh could kind of, have a point on that. But just to get the scale, just to get the volume, and just to get the viability, it might mean that from an industry level, you need to collaborate, even sometimes with your rivals. And dealerships also might have to look at, or OEM should allow multi-brand dealerships if they want, dealerships to continue to be viable.
Yeah, it has to have a complete rethink. But let's focus a bit on the now. And Mr. Malhotra, I want to get your perspective on the labor part of the problem. Now, I was, talking about this conversation I had earlier with some of the auto majors and their bosses, the concern is about the rules which include keeping your staff or your employees or your workers on premises, on the site. Do you think that kind of bandwidth actually exists? And the flip side is that there seems to be no real scope of, diluting those conditions.
These conditions in principle are okay, but if you start implementing on ground, just to look at a dealership, the person who comes to get his vehicle serviced or the person who comes to make an inquiry, how can you identify him at day one and say you cannot come? Similarly, if you look at the manpower in the auto industry, there's a lot of contractual manpower, whether at the OEM's level, whether at the ancillary level, and also at the dealership level. So that will take a straight hit point of it. And such rules that you have to keep them with you, in principle, they look okay, but at ground level implementation is very difficult. And what I think Hormazd mentioned is, and what Vinkesh also referred to, is the whole model of our dealerships, which is there, which are three big heads in terms of manpower cost, interest costs, and infrastructure costs. They have actually at a much scale level. So probably there's an opportunity to scale it down. The inventory levels at dealerships generally are 40 days. If you take in the suppliers and the company, 20 days, 60 days, can't we look at it 30 days, half it down? Infrastructures are too large, smaller infrastructures. And even banks can get a lower rate of interest. So there are a lot of things which have to happen. But manpower industry and I think the biggest concern is the job losses which can happen at all three levels. And I'm not talking about the permanent manpower. The contractual manpower, some who have gone away and some who are working in the small business.
Do you have an estimate of what kind of job losses we can see across the sector?
I don't want to make an estimate. It's too horrifying the estimate to make. But if you look at the manpower which is there, I mean, we talk of something, Vinkesh, 5 million manpower at the dealership, 4 million today.
Yeah, we are talking of something like that.
Even if I say 25% goes away, which is a very conservative basis, 1 million going away, shaving off just from dealerships. Similarly, if you go to the ancillary, there are 50 to 60% is contractual. So if those activity doesn't start, how will this sustain? So I am seeing it as more as a social issue, even along with operational issue. So what I think is clearly is that you need to take in life, you need to take some calculated risks. And when I say calculated risk, with a lot of safeguards. But if you want to be 100% sure of everything, nothing can start. So that's, I think the government has to have a more pragmatic approach in this entire thing. It has to have a lot of conditions done so that safeguards built in. But the safeguards can't be to a level that you can't even start playing. The match doesn't start at all.
This is an issue, and why this is an important issue is because it's not one that just the auto sector faces. And it's important to focus on how we can move on post the 3rd of May or whenever we really start getting back to economic activity. Waiting for COVID-19 to disappear and then starting economic activity is not really an option. Vinkesh, I want you to come in on this, on whether there is some kind of planning and thinking of life 15 days from now, 20 days from now, business preparedness, business survival that people are thinking of in the industry.
So actually, if I talk on the dealership front, obviously in our workshop, we have a lot of pending vehicles which are standing. So that's support with us. So whenever we start, we expect the customers to not come in to us the next day or the third day. They'll take at least a week, 10 days to stabilize themselves, meet those friends whom they haven't met, do whatever shopping or need-based things needed for home. So we'll get a breather of 10-15 days where we also have to recoup. Like Arunji said, the dealership is closed for about 40-45 days. Starting again to think of the two-post lifts and the equipments. No equipment has been made where 45 days of non-function you can start on the next day. So automatically we also have to again to be in customer support service, we'll also need a week to think on. And the biggest dread or biggest fear what we have is the migrant labor. Even our 25-30% of the people are based out of villages who come to cities or metros or tier 1 town to come in. And this is the time where they have all gone home. Even if they have the house in the dealership's vicinity, but still they have gone to their villages. And luckily or unluckily for us, they are happy because they are being utilizing themselves in their farms, and the farms results or the crops are good. So they are actually putting their labor and getting some result out of it. So on that front, maybe you will find maybe a small 20-25% of them not even coming back to cities for work. For this 2-3 months, they may find that farm is the base, and let's continue for another 1 year or so. So for us, the starting 15 days mode will be just checking how many people are we getting in, what are the pending vehicles which we can, or what are the pending deliveries, which, like I said, Navratri was there, we had some bookings and all that. All those pending deliveries, getting hold of the manpower, getting hold of the equipment, and getting ready for whenever the time is there where we can at least see the sales happening.
Hormazd, just last word from you to round it up. When you're speaking to people within the space, within the sector, what are they talking about? What they see next in terms of business continuity, in terms of re-looking at strategy, in what could be a very changed future?
Well, I think, fundamentally, it's going to be people are going to have to right-size their business, whether it's in terms of scaling it down, like, both Arun and Vinkesh talked about, especially, having smaller dealerships, less inventory, that sort of thing. Or it is, creating an environment where you keep your scale, but you have to share those costs, which is, again, as I spoke of, collaboration. I think the way I look at it is from a long-term perspective. I think for companies to remain independent is going to be very, very difficult, even in India. I mean, a company like Tata Motors, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if they have a joint venture or an alliance with another OEM. Mahindra has already done that with Ford. We will see probably Toyota and Suzuki accelerating their partnerships. So that's I think just has to happen. I mean, just the sheer economics now of running an auto industry or an auto business where cash has to be conserved as much as possible at all levels is going to be the way forward. But, coming back in demand, the way I see it, I would imagine that demand would revive probably at the budget end of the market because I think, people are going to be quite conservative. And, I might even see that people, the higher end, not or the mid end, let's say the 10 to 20 lakh end might go a little soft as people, might postpone their purchases. Again, as Vinkesh has a very discretionary purchase, you might see life cycles of ownership life cycles being extended. And I think another thing you could see is the used car market booming. Immediately after the lockdown, I think there's a unique opportunity of what I call the unused used cars, or the handful of BS4 cars which couldn't be sold. But the dealers have registered them so that they can be sold in the market. I don't know if Vinkesh might want to add to that. So you've got a few of these dynamics playing out. But, I think overall tough times, I think recovery, if at all, will start at the bottom.
So, Hormazd, on the BS4 front, yes, a lot of vehicle is in the market, and lot is really lot. The volumes are in lakhs where the BS4 vehicles are registered in somebody's name, which will come down to the used car market. And obviously, we are all looking forward that once this lockdown is open, we are able to liquidate those so that at least it helps in the dealer's liquidity. And thanks for supporting the way Supreme Court has been handling this auto industry.
It just puts things into perspective. I think 2 months ago, or I would say 3 months ago, the auto industry's biggest issue was this transition from BS4 to BS6 and to extend the deadline. That seems like the smallest of the worries right now. It's a fight for existence. In fact, it's a worry that actually many sectors share today across industries. And if these engines don't start revving up, it could lead to wide-scale issues in terms of job losses and economic impact as well. So let's hope for some clarity in the way forward. With that, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the show this evening.
Thank you very much, Aman.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.